Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is Thursday, May 9th, 8:08 a.m. on the East Coast. In the morning, we're going to break down this two-game NBA playoff slate. And what I'm hoping for is not the last two-game NBA playoff slate that we have back-to-back. Hopefully some of these teams can pull it to Game 7, so we don't just have showdown slates the rest of the way unless Draftkings, FanDuel, these sites start to do some overnight things, right? But welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Sal. I cover daily fantasy sports in the NFL streets, NBA right now coming to an end. The golf just started today, the Byron Nelson, if you're interested in that. And then MLB, some other things as well. Have some strategy videos. You can check it all out. Strategy guides down below. We are like 7 subscribers away from 4,000. 7 or 8, something like that. By the time you're watching this, we might have it. But regardless, hit me with a thumbs up. Subscribe if you have not already, if you enjoy this content. I greatly appreciate it. We're getting to the point where a lot of these things in these series are going to overlap, right? And the only thing that's changing and makes things interesting are if there was some kind of defensive change in the game before, right? We're in Game 6. We know what to expect out of these series. Or the DraftKings salary pricing. Our guys coming down in price to a point where we can now target them, right? So let's break down into it. Let's just get right into it. And we're going to start. There's no injury news, so really nothing there. Guys have come back. Guys are now fully healthy, it seems, with a guy like Pascal Siakam. Let's start with Philly and Toronto, right? So Toronto leads 3-2. It felt like forever ago that Philly was up 2-1. And also, let me point out that the Bucks won in 5 games. I was tempted to say 5. I said 6, so I was wrong. But after game 1, I got a lot of backlash just for picking the Bucks, the team that has only lost 1 playoff game, although at that time, obviously, had lost none. But the team that has beat, I believe it was, they have won 52 games by double digits or more this year. That team, so the team that is ranked number 3 in overall, I have it right here, ranked number 3 in overall offense, number 1 in defense. I don't know, but I'm happy the Bucks won. What happened to KD yesterday, I hope it's nothing major. The reports, there's nothing definite. If you did not watch last night's game, KD, it's not an Achilles, but it looked pretty bad. He had to come out, and the Rockets just couldn't steal one. James Harden only shot once in the last 8.5 minutes of the game. Like, that's very rare and surprising. But if something's really wrong with KD, maybe it doesn't affect the Warriors for this series. Maybe it doesn't even affect them for the Western Conference, which it's going to be tough to get past the Nuggets if they're the ones that win. But getting to that finals and playing potentially the Bucks for the Warriors without KD is a very big matchup problem. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all turns out. A lot of things in the NBA as a whole over the next 5 to 10 years with this KD injury could really be affected because this summer was the summer for another super team to potentially be built with Kyrie, Kauai, just guys that can leave teams if they really want to. Maybe not so much Kauai, but KD and Kyrie, the biggest names, right? So let's break down into it. Philly and Toronto, 213 implied game total here, 105.5 for Philly, 108 for Toronto. Looking forward to this game, 3-2, back in Philly. Look, Embiid, as Jimmy Butler said, he's legitimately sick as a dog. Okay, that's fine. But Ben Simmons is playing terrible. Kawhi Leonard, sure, is defending Ben Simmons, still is. We thought maybe more Butler in the last game, but still primary defender is Kawhi Leonard. And yeah, he's just bullying Ben Simmons. And somebody got into my mentions in the last game and said, no, today is the sharp call on Ben Simmons. And I thought it was actually a pretty good take. $6,900 Ben Simmons. Maybe Kawhi shades more Jimmy Butler, gives more opportunities for Ben Simmons against a guy like Lowry. But it didn't end up going that way, and now he's 6,600, and people are going to still try to do the same thing with Ben Simmons. And I think now he's at a point where if he hits 32 fantasy points, he does you no bad, right? He's fine for you at that point. He's hitting value, and sure, he's scoring in the mid-20s, high 20s, but 32 is not out of the question for the guy. So I have slight interest, but again, Kawhi's on him. I don't have a ton of interest. He's a guy who, if he falls in my lineup, I have $6,800 left, and he's the only option I have for that salary spot, then sure, I'll put him in there and I'll feel okay, but I'm not going to prioritize around him. And before we keep going, I just want to bring you guys over to Drafters. Our friends over at Drafters, these guys reached back out to me, and they told me about their game Rankem. So if you remember from the Masters, and this is a pretty cool game, so stick with me. If you remember from the Masters, we did this. We ranked a couple of players, and it's the new game mode. They're the only people that I see doing this. It seems like they kind of patented and invented this new game mode, and now they have it for NBA. I'll also be doing a video for the PGA Championship on this, and maybe another NBA one as well. But pretty much, if you think about the Draftkings captain mode or the FanDuel, the older captain mode, whatever it was, the MVP, where it's 1.5 points to the captain, you have to pay 1.5 the price. This, there's no salaries. It's just you pick 10 players, you rank 10 players, and the higher they're ranked means that's how much X amount of points they're going to get multiplied by. So your 10X guy, your highest ranked guy, will have 10X his points. So today, if you pick Jokic, and this is who I'm going to pick, if you pick Jokic as your 10X guy, and this is maybe more of a cashy play, but I also think he is my highest projected player, I have him projected for at least DraftKings points tonight, 62.5, and the next guy who's even close to him is Kawhi Leonard at around 54. So that is why I would put Kawhi Leonard. Look, this is not rocket science. These are the two guys who are by far the highest scorers. You could put Damian Lillard as your 10x, and you would be very contrarian. But the nice thing about drafters, and this is their rank 'em format, it's great. You go all the way down to 10. You have some reserves. So if one of your guys, say your 3x guy gets scratched, well, then your 2x guy would bump up to 3x, 1x to 2x, and your reserve goes into the 1x. So you're not really that much of a disadvantage. So say your 10x guy gets scratched for some reason, you're not just putting your reserve, a guy you didn't want to play up there. Everything shifts up. So that's really nice. The site itself also has other game modes. They have live snake drafts online. You just pick in little groups of like 4 people, draft a team, each position. It could be 5, it could be up to 8. And then you go and you compete against a bunch of other people in a bigger field that were also drafting little groups of 4. So it's pretty cool. I urge you to check it out. There's a link down below for this rank 'em, it's called. And then they also do a lot of free giveaways, things like that. For the Masters, they were giving away some things. They've given away, I believe, a football jersey or a football helmet. So some cool things that they're giving away so far over here at Drafters. It's a really cool site. I play on it here and there, and I really should play on it more because you're not going to have as much sharks. You're not going to have to worry just about 150 lines being built and you being at a disadvantage like on some other sites, which I love those other sites, but this one's a nice refresher, and it's a totally different strategy. So check it out. We'll come back to it and maybe fill these out a little later on in the video, but that's where I'm starting. Jokic and Kauai, and that really shouldn't surprise too many of you on a 2-game slate. So we talked about Ben Simmons, $6,600. It's cheap. He makes an initial interest player pool for me, but he's at the bottom of it. And I talked about it. Right? He's a guy at 6,600 who now you have to consider. At 6,900, he was a guy you had to consider. But are other people going to consider Ben Simmons because he's $6,600 today? And is there going to be any sort of ownership bump? I don't imagine it's drastic, but if you're going to get a higher owned Ben Simmons today than usual, and just because the price drops $300, look, I get it. It's easier for him to hit value. But him scoring me 29 fantasy points today does me no good, I imagine, at 6,600. Or maybe it doesn't kill me, but it's not what I'm wanting out of a 2-game slate where I can probably do better elsewhere. So some interest, nothing major. And I'm going to sound like a broken record with these slates. Jimmy Butler remains my most interesting play from this team. Price only goes up $100. He's $8,000. He's by far the guy who's in the best position to just put up a 50 burger or a 40 burger. $8,000. Look, now he's in this range where he's at an even price point, so maybe we see a reduction in ownership. If this was a 5-6 game slate, just psychologically, or the psychological part of DFS, people see an even price point. They don't think they're getting any benefit out of it. They like to go to the 7,900 for a discount, like $9.99, $79 or $7.99. You think you're getting a discount, or they like to go up to $8,100 because they think they're spending a lot more money and getting a better player. Where at $8,000, the person's fine. It's just this even point. If you look, Fantasy Labs and Jonathan Bales, one of the co-founders, he wrote a book, and part of that, he talks all about psychological DFS, and that's a really cool part of it. You guys should check out that book for sure. If you want any questions about it, or where to find it, or what the book is, let me know in the description or in the comments below. So yeah, Butler, my favorite Sixers still. Simmons has some interest. I'm not on Embiid. He's not even going to be in a player pool of mine. Look, and I should point out, last night was probably my worst night in DFS in a very long time. So, and it was crazy because I followed it up with a couple of really big wins. In the afternoon baseball yesterday, I hit 17th in the big tournament, so nothing major, or in like the 222, whatever their higher dollar one was. Nothing major, but turned a profit, and then returned all that profit at night because I built one lineup and I put it into about $1,200 worth of entries. And I think I won back like 100 or 200. It was one of the worst nights I've ever had. I mean, Kyrie and the Kyrie and Giannis stack. Giannis playing fine, but just didn't play the whole game because of the blowout. And Kyrie just acting like he didn't want to be there anymore. Excuse me. A little preemptive, excuse me there. But yeah, no Joel Embiid for me today. Just the way the salaries in the slate breaks down. Yes, Kauai. Yes, Jokic is on the slate. But there's also some other guys that are the way that the pricing is going that I just don't want to get to Embiid. If he goes for 70 at home in a must-win game back up against the wall, playing sick as a dog potentially still, then sure, he will kill me. Tobias Harris, very interested in. He is my second most interested player. So it's going to go Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris for me, and then actually J.J. Redick. And then you can get your Ben Simmons, your Embiid. So Tobias Harris, $6,400, a little bit too cheap for a guy who's going to go out there and play 40-plus minutes. He's taking a lot of shots. He took, I think, a couple games ago, over 20 shots. He's always down there. And the fact that Siakam is back is going to make Tobias Harris's matchup a lot worse, right? So let's keep this in mind. Like, Tobias Harris, Siakam only played 34 minutes in the last game, and I say only with a very cautious because the game did blow out. Siakam probably sees another 4 or 5 minute rotation at the end of the game, which means he's fully back and healthy, and he sure as hell played like it. If that's the case, that hurts Tobias Harris, right? So $6,400 Tobias Harris, although he's the second most interesting Sixer to me, it's really Jimmy Butler and then just a tier of other guys. We saw this in game 1 of the series. I really didn't like any of these guys. Jimmy Butler was the guy I liked a little bit. and nobody got there. You didn't need a single sixer, I don't think, in a game-winning lineup from the game one of this series. So today's looking very similar. Butler would be my main interest and the only guy that I even tried to get to if I land on Tobias Harris, if I land on Ben Simmons, guys who are now pretty similarly priced. I'd lean most likely right there in ownership call, but I probably lean Tobias Harris. Other guys, JJ Redick, he played 31 minutes in a game where he really didn't even touch the court on the last 9 minutes of the game. I imagine he sees 35 in that game if so. So a game up against the wall, we're going to see bigger minutes already. So it's reassuring to see JJ Redick potentially seeing increased minutes tonight. I have him at 35 minutes tonight. That's nice at $4,600. I have him hitting value. I do like JJ Redick. He's a guy who, in that 4K range, there's a good bunch of players that not stand out, but all kind of grade out the same. He's one of the ones that grades out the best. Defensive liability, sure, and all this stuff, but he's going to be out there, and I have him out there for 35 minutes. Third most interesting guy on this team. You have James Ennis at $3,500, the only guy off the bench that I would target. He played 23 minutes in a game where he was in foul trouble. I imagine I have him in at 24 minutes today, and he was as inefficient as they come. That was pretty much like the normal James Ennis. He's been playing a little bit over his head for the beginning of this series. He's $3,500, though. He's going to get good minutes. Mike Scott saw a little bit of a bump in minutes, 17, 18. Nothing that really makes me go crazy, though, right? So it is right now for me Jimmy Butler, and that's like a tier all the way up here. And then it drops off to Tobias Harris, JJ Redick, Ben Simmons. I do prefer Tobias Harris slightly over Ben Simmons today when you factor in those prices and what should be similar ownership, I imagine. And then just no real interest in Embiid and nobody else on the bench. So that's where I'm at right now. Let's move over to Toronto. Toronto's going to be the team that if I'm going to stack 4 guys from a team, it will be Toronto today. And I probably will end up getting there more times than not, just based on some of the pricing and based on all the guys I want. Kawhi Leonard dropped almost 50 points in pretty much 3 quarters the last time out. Only played like 37 minutes instead of what he's been playing around 43, 44. And if this game stays close tonight, I have him in on the road. You think it bodes well to stay a little bit closer. 2.5 point spread. Toronto favored him. I have Kawhi Leonard in tonight for 42 minutes. He's still $9,500. He should be 10-5 on this slate if I had to just throw out. And that's probably lowballing him, honestly. Have him projected for 54 fantasy points as of right now. I love Kawhi Leonard. He is, as of right now, going to be in my lineup. We slide down. Pascal Siakam, $7,100. I don't know how you get away from Pascal Siakam, who in the playoffs has been playing extremely well when healthy. Right? He came out the one game where he was a little bit limited, and then he played limited minutes, 29 in the game before that. Shot awful, 2 for 10, but still got a decent performance based on everything else. Comes out last game, plays 34 minutes, and again, he didn't get the increased run that he probably does. Look at Popcorn Machine, look at the game flow. He probably would have saw another 5-minute shift in that game, if not more. So I have Siakam at 40 minutes today, and I don't see why that's an over projection. If the game stays close, it is a game 6. It is a big game. Get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Have your studs out there. He seems healthy. $7,100 if we're going to get 38 minutes even of Siakam. I want that all day. And I'm fine pairing Siakam with a guy like Leonard. We saw it in the last game. Leonard scores pretty much 50. Siakam scores 46 in what is 3.5 quarters at most. Kyle Lowry, 6,500, still interesting to me. Look, getting all 3 of these guys, Leonard, Lowry, and Siakam, on a 2-game slate, maybe it's not going to make you super unique, but I like it, right? If there's a team that has a ton of affordable pieces, it is probably this team, right? Leonard is not 10-4 or 10-5 like Jokic is. Siakam is only 7,100. He's not 8K like Jimmy Butler is. As yes, Jimmy Butler is probably the best option to me on Philly, but he's not the most expensive player in his team, right? So he's not the secondary player who is $8,000. Siakam, he's 7,100. You have $6,500 Lowry, who is now significantly, or not significantly, but a decent amount cheaper, $400 cheaper than Jamal Murray now. So yeah, I like these guys. Marc Gasol, 5,100. He played 31 minutes, I believe, in that last game. It might have been 33. I think it was 31. Let's check. He played 33 in that last game, and Marc Gasol came out just like everybody else in the blowout. I don't know if he closes that game, but he came out with like 8 minutes left. So if you imagine he gets another 4-minute shift, Marc Gasol is playing 37, 38 minutes again. Yes, Serge Ibaka came out for a little while with the head injury, so you could say that gave him an extra bump, but I don't really think it did. We saw him play 39 minutes of previous game, which again, limited Siakam in that game. But I like Marc Gasol at that price point. I'm really liking the Raptors. Serge Ibaka at 4,100 also makes sense. I have him projected for 25 minutes today. I'm not totally sure if he gets there, but that's where I have him at. Yeah, Siakam, $4,100. He's one of the best plays in that range. If you factor in he's a point per minute guy, over a point per minute guy, even in this matchup. It just gets froggy when you say you like Kawhi, you like Siakam, which I imagine a lot of people will today. And then there's going to be a good amount who also like Gasol. Maybe a lot won't like Lowry in that same range, but are going to like Gasol. They like those big three pretty much, right? The 3, 4, 5 on the team. And then also saying you want to throw in a value $4,100 Siakam. It just makes it hard for everybody to get there, right? Now, surely we could see 50 points from Kauai, or 55. We could see 40, 45 from Siakam. We could see a 25, 28 piece from Gasol, and we could see a 20 piece from Ibaka, and I think that's pretty realistic, and that's all fine at their price points, right? So I do like him. I'm not really interested in Danny Green. 4,400 is still too cheap for Danny Green, but coming off the game when he just played well, scored a 30 piece, I think the ownership is going to be elevated because of that, and I don't really have confidence in this guy going back-to-back 30 pieces, or at least don't have as much confidence as the ownership would kind of predict that he is going to perform, right? So that's where I'm at with this team. It is ranking them for me: Kauai number 1, Siakam 2, 3 Marcus Gasol, 4 Lowry, 5 Ibaka. Portland and Denver: 216 team implied total, 116 team total for Portland, 106 team total for Denver. Portland, 4-point favorite at home. They are projected by Vegas to draw this game to a Game 7 today. All right, so I'm not getting much of Portland. Early on, built some lineups, did a couple things. I'm just not getting much of Portland. And let's just break it down. We have $8,800 Damian Lillard. We have $6,800 TJ McCollum. Both guys who, in a closeout game at home, my brain says smash spots. But let's hold on a second, right? Denver's done a beautiful job stopping these guys. And yes, again, the pressure is on now, so maybe Dame goes out and he balls out, or CJ goes out, and there's just extra emphasis tonight, right? But these guys have been shut down in this series for the most part, or at least as good as Denver could have hoped for to this point in the series. Damian Lillard has been suppressed. So has CJ McCollum. Just look at the last game. So $8,800 for Damian Lillard, although it is a cheap price point, the contrarian move, I guess, I don't know if it's optimal, but a way to be different is to go to Damian over a Kawhi Leonard, and you're saving yourself $700 there. Or you're saving yourself, $700 there to do other things, and now you have a unique build. And I understand that, and I'm thinking that wholeheartedly, that I know if I get off of a Kawhi and Jokic stack, if it's even possible today based on the value, I know that it's going to make me different. I just don't think it's optimal. I have Damian Lillard projected for around 44 fantasy points. When you tell me he's $700 less than Kawhi, who I have projected for a median projection of over 10 fantasy points more, 10.5, it's tough for me to get to Damian Lillard, and then you take into account this matchup. So just based on construction, I'm not going to have much interest in Lillard. I understand that maybe later in the day, once I see some ownership, if Kawhi is just absolutely on another planet, 70% again, then maybe I try to fade it. But I think that game that you were going to get Kawhi at low point totals was the last one, when he only played 3 quarters and maybe a little bit of the fourth. So I just don't have interest in a guy like Damian Lillard. CJ McCollum, on the other hand, at $6,800, I have a little bit of interest in, but again, not too much. When you compare CJ McCollum to $6,600 Ben Simmons, I prefer McCollum there. When you compare him to $6,400 to Tobias Harris, it gets a little bit closer based on the fact that they both have tough matchups. McCollum, although he went off in that overtime game, the 4 overtime game, he's also been suppressed in this series. Guys like Torrey Craig, guys like Gary Harris have been playing extremely well on Damian Lillard and on CJ McCollum. Malik Beasley also earlier in the series on Damian Lillard also did a good job. So Portland side, it's tough for me to get to these guards at their price points, especially when we consider this is not just a vacuum. I'm not looking at a showdown slate, not just this one team. I'm looking at both of these games and the fact that Kawhi and Siakam are 7,100 and 9,500. I want to get there, and then you factor in also Jokic is on the slate. It's going to be tough for me to get to those two guys. Moving forward, so the small forward position, if we continue to see Mo Harkless start here, I'm not sure what to make of it. So this is game 6. So game 2, Mo Harkless got injured, so that's why he had limited minutes. Game 3, the 4 overtime game, comes back out, and he plays pretty big minutes, 39, but that was also with the 4 overtimes. Game 4 comes out, does not get a lot of run. There was some foul trouble, though, and he was also coming off of the injury. Game 5, the last game, only saw limited minutes, 17 minutes, I believe. But if we look at Popcorn Machine, let me just make sure. 13 minutes. But if we look at Popcorn Machine, and let me go to Popcorn Machine really quickly. Look, this game blew out, right? You look at Popcorn Machine, Mo Harkless starts the game out with 5.5 minutes of play, and he picks up his second personal foul. He then stays in for another 1.5 minutes, and that's when they pull him. I'll zoom this in. So it seems like the foul trouble really didn't get Mo Harkless less time because he stayed in for another 1.5 minutes, unless there was just no stoppage, but the foul itself would cause a stoppage at 6:58. Okay, fine. Mo Harkless then does not play the final 6.5 minutes of the first quarter and the final 12 minutes of the second quarter. If you have 2 personal fouls and 5 minutes into the game, in a playoff game, you're most likely going to see some more time in the first half, right? He then starts the second half, and he plays the first 7 minutes and 49 seconds. That's very good to see. He picks up a personal foul at the 9:28 mark, and then that's, I believe, when he comes out of the game. So he picks up his third personal foul, but only a couple minutes left in the third quarter. So, I mean, 3 more personal fouls for a whole quarter. That's fine. Then the blowout ensues, but who knows if he even plays. So I'm actually significantly surprised by this. I thought that a lot of it was going to be foul trouble, and you could see maybe it was 2 early personal fouls midway through the first quarter. But again, he stays in and then just doesn't touch the court the whole second quarter. It's just very interesting to me. The guy who checked in for McCollum when that happened was Rodney Hood. When Rodney Hood came out, then you saw Damian Lillard go back in for Rodney Hood. So it really wasn't anything major. Rodney Hood's still going to get minutes. So I just think Mo Harkless is getting a little bit phased out here. And maybe some of it can be chalked up to the injury. He's not 100%. Maybe some of it can be chalked up to these early fouls. I don't know, really. So I don't want to touch him. I know he's only $3,900, but it's just scary to me. If he continues to start, then maybe. But yeah, it's definitely scary. This guy can go out there and play 18 minutes, or he can go out there and everything has just been foul trouble, and he can go out there and play 30 minutes, which he was playing earlier in the playoffs. Right now, I don't know what to do. I'm not touching it, is what I'm saying. 3,900, sure, it's cheap, but I think there's better options down there, actually. Al-Farouq Aminu. So Al-Farouq Aminu had to defend Jokic last game. I don't know if a lot of people know this. Jokic was defended by Aminu. They tried to hide Cantor on Paul Millsap. That did not work. That's why Millsap went off, because Cantor's one shoulder and terrible defense was on him. So Al-Farouq Aminu, I do have interest in at that price point. It's a little bit too... It's in the right range, I would say. He's going to have to be out there. I don't know what else they're going to do. I think they should maybe put Zach Collins out there, get more offensive with it, because really Amino's not doing anything for them out there this whole series. He plays some defense, but it's not helping out too much. I think he's fine. Again, if he's the last guy into my lineup, I'm okay with it. I'm not trying to get there. And then Cantor, I just can't get to Cantor. $5,700, he grades out extremely well for me, but there's no way for me to factor in his shoulder injury. There's no way to factor in that he has a separated shoulder, and he's still playing minutes, right? I think he was on pace to play like 32 or 33 in the last game, but he's playing at half, maybe 60%, 70%. He's playing with a separated shoulder that he gets massage therapy on after the game for like an hour and a half every single night. So yeah, and keep in mind, he's pretty much played like an extra game or close to it with that 4 overtime game where he played 50-something minutes when he only plays 30 minutes a game. So a lot of wear and tear on him. $5,700 is very cheap, and maybe later in the day, if we get better news on his shoulder, I'll be fine to go there. But right now, I just can't touch that. In terms of the bench players for this team, it's going to be Zach Collins for me. His price only comes up $100. He played, I think, right around 20 and a half, 21 minutes in that last game, and he played extremely well. I had him. He's the reason that I had a very good night. He 9x, scored 27 fantasy points. And really, he should be playing more. You have a guy playing with a half of his shoulder in Cantor who does not play good defense. He rebounds fine, does not play good defense. Look, I get it. If you throw Zach Collins out there and you try and have him defend Jokic, it might not go well, or Millsap, it might not go well. But is it going well right now? No. So put a guy out there who can play 100%, who is also good on offense, just like Cantor, but he's 100%. So $3,100, I like Zach Collins. I like the potential for him to see more minutes in this game. And it seems like now he's locked in closer to his 20 minutes because he's been super productive in those minutes. Outside of that, don't look into the Myers, Leonard, or any of these other guys getting run. It was a blowout run. Rodney Hood at $3,700, I believe. He's way too cheap. He's going to play 24, 25 minutes. He's another piece of value that I do like. Denver's side of the ball. Jamal Murray, $6,900. Yeah, he's still interesting. Sure, his price is coming up, but look at what he's doing in the series, averaging like 40 fantasy points a game. He's definitely interesting. He's getting his way against McCollum, against Lillard, which is extremely surprising. This young guy is playing out of his mind, and I love watching Jamal Murray play. So yeah, he's interesting. There's nothing really to say there. I would prefer Jamal Murray to Kyle Lowry, just because I know I'm going to get pieces of Kawhi Leonard, Pascal Siakam, and Marc Gasol. So when we're trying to just separate where all that production is going to go, I land more on Jamal Murray. Gary Harris continues to play big minutes like he has all playoffs long. He's been productive in the past 2 games, 30 points in the last game. I'm fine getting to Gary Harris. I'm not going to prioritize it. He's another guy just like Aminu. And when you say Aminu or Gary Harris, I lean Aminu just because of the position. He's going to play power forward. He's going to be closer to the rim. Gary Harris is a shooting guard, although Gary Harris should most likely see 8 to 10 more minutes than Aminu. I like Aminu's production better from his position. Gary Harris have it like 0.7 fantasy points per minute. Aminu I have around 0.85, 0.88. So yeah, Gary Harris I'm indifferent to. Will Barton versus Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig played a little bit more minutes. Will Barton played 26 minutes. Torrey Craig played around 23, 24 in that last game. Torrey Craig was a little bit more productive, knocked down a couple of threes. Will Barton had all the opportunities in the world. The blowout probably limited his run by 3 or 4 minutes as he was going to close out that game once again. So I'm fine going right back to Will Barton at $4,300, I believe. He was going to play 30-plus minutes for a third straight game. If that game did not blow out, Will Barton would have finished closing the game out, or at least that's what I can indicate from the previous 2 games and the fact that he was in with 4 or 5 minutes left. He gets pulled. It gets to garbage time in about 4 minutes left where Mason Plumlee just shined. So, yeah, Will Barton, I do prefer still over Torrey Craig, even though there's a $1,000 price difference. I do like Will Barton. I think he's a fine value play on the slate. Paul Millsap's great at 6,200. He grades out as 6Xing for me. He's one of the best plays on the slate tonight. If they dare put Enes Kanter back on him, he's going to have his way. Keep in mind, he balled out in the last game. And he didn't even play the majority of the fourth quarter. Like, he balled out in 3 quarters. So, yeah, Paul Millsap's still too cheap. And Jokic, there's not much to say about Jokic. He grades out as the highest scoring raw play on the slate. That should be of no surprise. Highest price guy on the slate. He grades out as 62.5 fantasy points for me right now. Next closest guy is Kauai at 54. So when a guy is grading out as 8 points higher on the slate as anybody else, yeah, it's a pretty smart play, definitely in cash and even in a GPP to play that guy if that's his median projection. So basically, his range of outcomes on a bad night is going to be around 50 in this matchup, with his ceiling in the mid to high 70s, right? If the game just doesn't go to 4 overtimes where he scores 90. But yeah, there's not much to say there. Let's go over to the early interests. All right, so this is priced, or this should be factored in by price. Yeah, so I pretty much said all of this, right? And this is what I would consider an early player pool. Maybe I would throw Will Barton. I don't think I have Will Barton in here, so let's do that right now. This is what I would pretty much just consider early in the day a player pool. So when you're asking me, these are not my picks. These are guys that I'm interested in early in the day. As the day goes on, I do more research. More news potentially comes out. I will change up some of these guys. Some will leave. Maybe I'll even add a few. Let's just sort this really quickly by price. But this is it. You guys can use this as your player pool if you want. And girls, I really don't mind. I'm just telling you that this probably changes for me by the end of the day. So yeah, I already told you Jokic and Leonard, and I don't have a lot of interest in Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum, and the fact that they're going home scares the hell out of me. Like, I understand it. Game 6 back up against the wall in a playoff game. Damian Lillard is probably one of the clutchest players and one of the players you want the most. So maybe as the day goes on, I get that narrative in my head a little bit more. But that's going to result in me fading either Jokic or Leonard, and it just seems really hard for one of those guys not to get there. But again, Lillard is cheaper, so maybe you get there. Jimmy Butler, my favorite play. And really the only guy I have a ton of interest or I would prioritize on this Philadelphia 76ers team. Siakam, 7,100, way too cheap. You see him right here. He's hitting 5.73 value for me today. Jokic is around 5.96. Leonard, 5.77. So if you think Leonard is a good play today, I pretty much have Siakam as the exact same grading out point per minute wise. Jamal Murray, still some interest. Ben Simmons, I already said that 6,600 is becoming cheap enough to the point where I like him. I have him hitting 4.99 value, which is pretty much hitting 5x. So around 32 fantasy points today. Nothing crazy. Kyle Lowry, of course, interesting to me. A lot of these Raptors stand out. Tobias Harris, 6,400, yes. Paul Millsap, 62. You could read the rest of the list, right? I think the nice value plays are Zach Collins at 3,100, are Rodney Hood. They come from the same game. And then Serge Ibaka at 4,100. You can go right back to James Ennis, who he burned a lot of people in the last game, $3,500. I don't expect him to play as poorly as he did in that last game. I don't expect him to score 30 fantasy points, but if there's lower ownership on a guy like that, he could be a nice pivot off of Rodney Hood if he's going to garner more ownership. Will Barton was going to be on track to play 30 minutes for a third straight game and close out a third straight game, so I do like that. That's it. That is the 2-game slate, and hopefully it is not our last 2-game slate. It is very sad. I will quickly go back to Drafters here. Remember, check out Drafters. Link down below to drafters.com. You can try this Rankum game. Again, you're not playing sharps. There's no professionals on this site that are ridiculously good. So if I had to pick an 8X guy, let's be a little different. Let's go Jimmy Butler. We'll put him over a guy like Lillard, see if that helps us out in any way, shape, or form. Where is Pascal, actually? Let's go 3. You know what? Let's go with 3 here. Let's go Pascal Siakam. Then let's go Jimmy Butler. Then let's go Paul Millsap. So we're being a little bit different there, right? We haven't even touched Damian Lillard. Now I'll touch Damian Lillard. I'm actually thinking about this more. Damian Lillard. Let's go Jimmy Butler. Let's go Paul Millsap. And then Embiid. That's where I'm at. So there's your bunch of guys. Look, this is not a lineup. I'm saying go and play. You're going to win all the money in the world. I literally just did that. You guys watched in 10 to 15 seconds. But I think that's a nice little differentiated lineup. And I like it. So thank you guys for watching this so much. Thank you guys for watching this. We are like 7 subscribers away from 4,000. If we already saw and we already hit 4,000, comment down below, say we hit 4,000, and try and make it 4,001 or 4,002, whatever it is. Let's keep going. I love this. I want to keep doing this. This is the best. You guys are the reason why. So thank you so much. Peace out, gang.